price depends upon the two factor only. First is age and second is risk. This factor, why not the salary the person is earning at that time? The person who is earning 1 lakh per month, he should not be compensated at the same rate the person who is earning 1000 rupees per month only.
That is an administrative question. So I think whatever expert group formulated, they must have.
So they know what to discriminate between the richer and the poor.
Yes, sir. Actually, if we are giving the same amount to the two persons, so actually we are inducing the socially deprived people.
Actually, Indians in Arab most of the time may be participating on skills.
Any person who is earning 1 lakh, he won't go for
you have to have something minimum. Please understand, up till now it was only in documentation that compensation was to be given. It was after that trial which happened in Odisha that this human papilloma virus trial which created a problem. That was where the time point where actually compensation process started. Obviously, it's a desirable thing. What you're saying is definitely desirable. But please understand, you must appreciate at least something bare minimum is being given over there. So it is a start. Obviously, we are not at the same level as US or other advanced countries are there. Please understand that it is in the process of evolution. It's the first step, at least some compensation is being available. And please, I can tell you frankly, still, despite having this formula, companies are still having their own issues over issuing this compensation. I'm ready given this. I'm secretary of the ethics committee. I know how much I have to fight with everybody till I have to give that there is an alien. First, they are ready to consider it's an essay. Then the second issue comes about association. So the most plausible thing is it is possibly related. So that is usually, if you find, those who are sitting in the CBCSE who was looking at those essay report, they will find that most of the association would be possible. And I recently came aware about a trial in which a patient had already, it's an anti-diabetic patient has already died. It was not reported even. Why? Because the company was fearing that there would be a compensation thing and they would have to really be wiped out, their whole assets would be wiped out. So this is the issue. You need to appreciate that the regulator is stepping up the work. You need to appreciate sponsors are being squeezed. And you need to appreciate the ethics committee are being given more teeth to assess it independently. It is no longer that it's only a compensation committee or expert committee sitting in Delhi to do it. You are giving an equal chance to look at the document, because as an EC member, you are in the best position to look at the relationship. Because the source document is in front of you, events are there in front of you, you can make an association, you can find out what is the relationship over there. So please understand, it is a step forward. It is not the most ideal. What you are saying is perfectly correct. But please remember, it's an evolution process. We might reach that point over there. But at least understand, for a poor people, obviously the people who are affluent, they would have other resources at hand, they would have made some other compensatory, they would have life insurance, so many other things over there. But a poor person who is a entrepreneur, who is a laborer, for him even this is something reasonable. I agree it could be turned around, but who would put his or her life on risk just to get enrolled in a clinical trial and die from it so that he or she can get a compensation? Nobody would put themselves on it.
Thank you.
I now invite Professor Sandeep Kaushal sir. He is the head of department from BMC Ludhiana. His lecture was left out from the morning session, and the topic is rational prescribing through problem-based learning.
Good evening, everybody. First, I would like to thank dear friend Dr. Zia and Nasirudin for giving me this opportunity to be with you. Because of issues not on my control, I was delayed and I had an extended journey of 16 hours from my place, which would have taken just 7 hours. So I will be briefly talking to you about rational prescribing, as the name of the society is regarding rational prescribing. So I am just trying to look at how in teaching we can incorporate rational prescribing. So you all are aware about, I think you reading from my institution, this is my institution. So I'll be talking about rational prescribing, problem-based learning. We all are aware what is problem-based learning. Those who are in medical education are very conversant with this, that now the SPICES model is what is coming into play, and this is what everybody is advocating. People in faculty, in medical colleges, there is an at-home workshop and everybody has to attend, and we are looking at attitudes and communication skills which is there. So no longer the way we were taught. I don't criticize the way we were taught. We are a product of another system. Probably that was best at that point of time, but now with the changing times, people want it to be student-centered, it should be problem-based, it should be integrated, it should be community-based, it should be elective, and it should be system. So everything that we are talking about in medical curriculum, it talks about the dominance of curriculum, with teacher having a minor supporting force. So these days, whatever we talk about teaching, we talk about learning. So everything is learning based which is there. So for a problem-based learning, please remember it is not only the information which is needed to solve a problem. You need many other aspects for it, and information is going exponentially. For example, you just know a patient has come to you, looking at the age group, looking at the socio-economic status, just looking at the clinical manifestation or the sign and symptom with the patient, that it may not be possible to arrive at a diagnosis. You can just list out what are the systems which are probably involved, but you need a lot of other things to fill in the blanks so that you can arrive at a diagnosis which require investigations to be done, which require response to the treatment, and so on and so forth. So this is just briefly about history of problem-based learning. It was started with William Osler, who said that we need not to rely on memory, because everything what we talk about, though in Indian system, is just memory recall. You need to look at the entrance examination, it is not testing your skill, it is just testing your memory recall. But we are in MCI, people are trying to change the things. It will take a time, and for that we as teachers also need to evolve and try to work on it. And it, as you can see it over here, over a period of time, it got introduced all over the world. And recently I came over an article that a few universities in 2018 are planning to totally remove didactic lectures, so there is going to be a death of didactic lecture in 2018. There is a project onward which is going to totally remove all the didactic lectures. There are going to be only interactive teaching which is going to be there. There are certain assumptions we talk about in adult learning. It has to be independent and self-directed. Please understand the concept of adult learning is slightly different in India as compared to abroad. What happens in abroad is anybody who goes into medical education, anybody who goes into medical school goes after doing a BSc. So it means he or she is at least 3 years mature. In India, the students who enter a medical school, they are entering after +2. So their level of maturity is relatively less. So that is why still we have to spoon feed at number of times. Though we are trying to put them at the same level, we are trying to treat them as 3 years more adult. The culture in West is totally different. People are going to move out of their homes by 16 years of age, and there even till 16 years of age you are sleeping next to your mother or next to your father in the same room over there, just because they are afraid you will get afraid or you will have some problems over there. So they have to accommodate experience, there has to be value learning, and they have to be interested in immediate problem-centric approaches, and you have to get motivated to learn by inner drive rather than external drive. So no longer we need a ruler to push them, it is basically their own inner drive which is to be doing all the things. The self-directed learning is to organize teaching and learning so that the learning is within the learner's control. So if you look at the content these days, there are some companies coming up who are making the content available. Medical Council of India is asking you to record your lectures and make them available so that students who miss a lecture can go through the lecture stepwise even at a later stage. So these all things are being done to do that. So learners are striving towards a goal so that they are able to accept responsibility for their own learning. The point is that they are yet not ready to accept the responsibility. It's only a small fraction. But it is being forced upon for everybody. But anyway, we have to change, so we are making a change which is there. So what is the problem-based learning? The idea behind the problem-based learning is that the starting point for the learning should be a problem or a query, or a puzzle which a learner wishes to solve. So if you look at the world literature in Nepal, in some university, my master university, there are curricula that are basically problem-based. So we are trying to find a middle way for the same. I'll talk about 2 examples how we are integrating at our place and the way we are doing for the last many years. Here small groups are presented with contextual situations and they are tasked to define the problem, decide what skills and resources are necessary to investigate and then give solutions. So it usually starts with a problem, and students acquire skills and understanding based on it. There are two ways to do it. One is problem solving, other is problem based learning. In problem solving, we arrive at decisions which are based on prior knowledge and reasoning. In Indian context, this is the best way to do it because we are still having a culture of didactic lectures, demonstrations. We have a lecture of doing practicals. So at least they have a decision based upon their prior knowledge. Whereas in the best they do is problem based learning, is simply tell them, okay, this is a case file. This, let's say, patient suffering from SLE. You don't even tell it is SLE. You have to first find out from the manifestations, from the history, that what is the diagnosis, and then you try to look at what therapy has been given, what responses have been given. So it is usually over there. So we approach this in two different ways. So the starting point is problem posed and problem based learning and problem solving. We tell them that what we need to know from there. Please understand, it is not the panacea of everything. It is not that this is the ultimate. Some studies, and as is in literature, some studies support it, some studies oppose it, so there are always going to be two schools of thought about it. So what are the advantages? The most advantage of this is why people want it is that it is student-centered, because student has an interest in it. It compares the generic competencies which are there, it is integrated because it will look at starting from anatomy till the prevention component. It is motivating, it gives you a good feel that okay, you are able to decipher this step, and it's just like a treasure hunting. It gives you deep learning and gives you constructive thought. Please remember, whatever teaching we are doing to our students, ultimately we are not going to ask them to write a note on, let's say, ORS, or write a note on an antibiotic when the patient comes to you. At that point of time, they have to identify what the diagnosis of the patient is, what is the best drug for that patient, and what is the dose to be given, and what is the duration to be followed. So there are so many things which are unsaid, which we want them to apply. So it is just to give them a situation where they can apply it over there, and usually it is a small group. Looking at the recent MCA guidance, the number of faculty is decreasing day by day. You are expected to teach a faculty of 100, students of 100 group with just 4 faculty. It means 25 students in a group. Is that a small group? Okay. So as compared to lecture based teaching over here you have small group which is there, but obviously you have to have more time at hand, and that is what is required for. Here the teacher acts basically as a facilitator. He or she will introduce the topic, give them links which the students has to follow. So please understand, because it is student centric. So the students need to be motivated enough to read up before they come for the next. So teacher is a compass that activates the magnets of curiosity, knowledge and wisdom. But for that, teacher to act as a magnet, the student has to have some iron in him. So for a good PBL facilitator, you must first understand. Please remember, the fault is not only at the student, it is us at teacher's level also. Please remember, we have to change our role. We are no longer just going to stand on a podium and tell them blah blah blah, this is this, and write a note and it's done. So we have to understand their psyche, we have to understand to make it more interesting for them. Okay, for a student, obviously, the most important thing and the most resented thing for the student is attendance. So they have to be physically present, only then they can. If they are not present, nobody can teach them anything at all. And they also need to understand the process. They don't have to jump the rope. Basically, you will have a students over there who would be over anxious or who would like to impress a teacher, and they would really try to overdo others. But please remember, as a teacher, you have to ensure that there are students who are over anxious and there are students who are backbenchers who are not interested in anything at all. So you have to involve everybody. And there is a minimum baseline level which everybody has to cross. So the objectives of PBL could be scientific reasoning, appraisal, IT literacy. I will be focusing on rational prescribing using a model of prescription writing. Okay? It could be acquiring of theoretical or clinical knowledge. It could be attitudes, value of teamwork, interpersonal skill, importance of psychosocial issues, open to suggestion, and even respect each other. Please remember, these are the attributes which we want in young doctors. Because if we have these attributes, the issues that we are facing as doctors today, the resentment which the public has against us, or the divide which has come over there, it will only be bridged if we have a value of teamwork. Everybody is important, right from the watchman standing at the gate, till a super specialist doing the procedure, till a pharmacist who is providing medicines to you, till a storekeeper who is getting the things to you. And we have to have good interpersonal skills. We need to respect each other, not that he is a sweeper, no, not like that. He is a technical partner. He doesn't do the cleaning, the infection will spread. Disadvantages are for teachers who can't teach. You know, please remember, teaching is something which comes with passion. It's not that you are just holding a designation of assistant professor, or professor. Forgive my saying so, but some people are not able to put the things across. There is an involvement of human resources, so you will see that how much people are required to do this. And there are other resources, financial and other things. You need papers, you need some psychological staff, you need to do so many licensing which is to be done. And the most important thing is you have to develop a role model. Everybody actually thinks that he is the role model, but please understand it may not be. And there is obviously with all the information technology and Dr. Google at your fingertips on the mobiles and everywhere, there is an information overload and really causes a burnout over there and you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. So you should know that what is there, what is important, what needs to be done. Just briefly, being a pharmacologist, I can't do it without talking about the prescription. So as per definition, it's a legal tender, written order which contains names and quantities of the substances to be given and written on a printed form. Okay? So for rational prescribing, what is required? You require first thing the diagnosis, right diagnosis. You require what is the pathophysiological implication of the diagnosis. Whether it is progressing, disease is stable, what are the next things which are anticipated. Select a specific therapeutic objective for treating this. Select a drug of choice, key drug, preferably yours. Determine what is the appropriate dosing regime. Devise a plan for monitoring drugs. And plan a program for patient education. Please remember, in this era of litigation, just writing a prescription is not. You have to write a word about investigations, you write a word about compliance, you need to write a word when the patient has to come back to you, you need to write about what is motivation education. The parts we all are aware of. So this is the model prescription which has been issued by MCI. So this was the objective on the basis that if we presume, the presumption for all this, what I'm going to talk to you about is if a student is able to write a correct prescription, we just need to assess whether he or she has the rationality to understand why he or she is choosing a particular drug, a particular dose, a particular dosage form which is there. So it could be starting with a case and then we assess, because please remember it is the assessment which drives the learning. For a student, what is more important? The marks and exam. He is not interested in कि आपने उसको कॉपी में कितने नंबर दिए, उसके अगर पूरी में मार्क्स अच्छे आ रहे हैं, प्रैक्टिकल में मार्क्स अच्छे आ रहे हैं, that is the end point for him. So therefore this part has to be merged with the examination evaluation system. Only then he or she will put attention to it, and you just have to guide them. You can just give them a tool, this is the way to do the right thing. It may be more labor intensive, but if they keep on doing it again and again, it will take less and less time, it will become automatic. I talk about the first model, which is problem-based learning, which I do at my institution. So what we do is, as a standard teaching, there is a didactic lecture, there is a group discussion, and then we select a case where we identify which are the diseases that we are going to do. Every year we do 3 to 5 of such. Here we talk to a clinician beforehand that okay sir, we require your help, so will you be available on this particular date or whatever is date of your convenience, time of your convenience, where he or she would be available to lecture. Obviously, the student has undergone a didactic lecture and a group discussion, so we want to know what is his knowledge batch. We do a pre-test, and after that it's over, we do a post-test. And in order to see whether the rational prescribing has seeped into him or her, we do a prescription writing. That is done in small. The rest all is done in a larger group, but this is done in a small. And then obviously they get to know how they score in the theory test, which will be part of the program. So I'm going to talk about type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now please remember, when we do a problem-based learning, it always must have a learning objective. The objective of 2 scenarios which I'm going to give you is the student should be able to prescribe rationally for a patient suffering from diabetes mellitus. So this is just, we take an actual patient, the whole history is given, this is talking, I'll just skip through the things, I'll just rapidly go through the same. So if we just talk about the presenting complaints, then we prompt the student to say any other history is important. He or she will say family history, personal history. So once they prompt it out, then we give them the next clue. And after that, anything important in past history, and then we ask them what you would look for specifically in general physical exam. So here, the most important thing would be the fundus. Rule out whether there is already a development of retinopathy or not, because that comes in general physical, that will come in systemic examination. In addition to this, looking at autonomic dysfunction and articulation, looking at postural fault under that would be, but usually that's quite rare in our situation. And then we tell them, okay, the systemic examination is, these are the findings of systemic examination. So now you have to tell us what are the differentials. What things you are thinking on the basis of your history, on the basis of your physical examination, what are the differentials. The next thing we are asking, okay, if you have these differentials, what investigation would you like to order to find out the, breaking out that, okay, which comes the first and which comes the second. And then we give them the investigation report which is there. For example, we are talking about a scenario. This is on the first result which is there, as you can find out that the blood sugar is quite high, the renal function is normal, so basically this is a patient with simply developed type 2 diabetes. Then we ask them, okay, if this is a patient who is presenting to you, how would you treat? In this scenario, the student already had a theory lecture, didactic teaching. He had his group discussion in which all the drugs and everything has been discussed. We prompt them to answer. And based upon their answers, the clinicians and the pharmacologists, they interact with the student to guide them to it. And then the treatment is mainly first the diet control, just confirming that it is actually just an occasional change or it is actually diabetes as such. Get a glycosylated hemoglobin at 3 months, and then if the patient has scheduled over the view, so we ask for it. Lifestyle modification is an important part. We illustrate on that, but these are there, which one has to follow. And then we give the second clue. Okay, this patient has been started just with lifestyle modification. No medication has been given, so it's only non-pharmacological. So we are asking the patient to come 6 months later. Now what is happening? He is compliant, still has urges to take larvae, which is indicating that his diabetes requires now for pharmacotherapy. We look at again with all the points that he has to remember to do general physical examination, systemic examination. Then again we ask what new investigation would you ask for, and based upon that we again get another set of investigation. As you can see, the blood sugar levels are still high, there is no renal dysfunction, and if you look at the glycosylated hemoglobin, it has slightly increased from 8.1 to 8.4. Then we ask what is the treatment now? Treatment would be to add metformin. It would be started at 500 mg once a day, but actually the prescription would come out to be 1 gram, which is there, and gradually we write this or catch up. And then we sensitize them. Okay, again, this is again a remember a process. We already have given a pre-test which has questions on all these. So we ensure that all the questions which are asked in pre-test, they are answered in the discussion. So that again it is reactivated. Then we tell them, okay, what happens 1 year later? The gain comes with frequency of maturation, but not burning, so it is not UTI. There is not having blurring of vision, and there is no evidence of retinopathy or other systemic examination normal. And what you see over there is now his glycosylated hemoglobin has come to 7.2, has improved. So it means this patient has responded to treatment. And so we continue with the same therapy. Then the patient again starts having symptoms of polyuria and polydipsia. It is now still there is no diabetic retinopathy. Okay, so it means again the investigation is indicating that his glycosylated has been, so probably he needs another drug over there. So we're going to add up a sulfonylurea. So we add up leventelamide over there and continue with the vasculoassassin and so on and so forth. So then we talk about that obviously we're putting on a sulfonylurea, so there's an incidence or there's a possibility there would be a secondary failure. So we sensitize them over there, and then we say that okay, patient comes on next visit, and now he starts having pains in fingers and toes, which is indicating he is not developing neuropathy. That means at this point of time, we'll start adding up other drugs, and probably there is now a failure with sulfonylurea, so we add up insulin over there, and we could start. It's a debatable thing whether you want to start vitamin B12 or you want to start other drugs over there. So that's why we have not recommended it over there, because evidence is plus minus over there. Okay, so once this is over, so we ensure that they are able to come up with prompts. The clinicians as well as the pharmacologists, they are able to answer their queries. So they are asked questions. They are encouraged to ask questions from the faculty as well as from the clinician. Okay, and once it is over, so we do a post test and then they are divided into small groups. They are given an exercise each to write the prescription, because now we have discussed threadbare in brief points, rationality for selection of each drug, the doses to be used, what important things are to be done. So they are given different exercises prescribed for a 45-year-old male complaining of increased thirst, frequency of maturation, increased temperature. The symptoms are given over here which are indicating that probably this patient suffering from diabetes, and investigation is made. The problem over here is that because we are trying to ensure that they are able to learn rational prescribing, so we are not giving them a diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. Ideally, in that scenario, you should also say the patient has now been diagnosed with diabetes mellitus, so that the student doesn't miss out on the diagnosis and therefore doesn't give a wrong drug choice. But this is a point which is that we are trying to keep in mind, because we just had exposed them to a case scenario, so they should be able to make it out. Another exercise would be given to another group of 50-year-old diabetic on irregular treatment, altered sensorium. So this is a patient who has gone with diabetic ketoacidosis. Third is a 45-year-old male with type 2 diabetes now has again a high glycosylated. This is a secondary failure. This is a patient with IBDM who is presented. So we have a different scenario which are presented to 4 different groups, because we have 4 faculty members. So we would be giving each of these so they get a chance to do. So this is usually done in a 2-hour period which is there. The last 30 minutes are left for this session. At a later stage in another 2-hour session, so we rotate the groups so that all of them have answered at least all these 4 scenarios. So this is one way that we are trying to do it over here. The other is problem solving model that we use. So here what we do is, once we have covered a systemic pharmacology, what we do in my department is first we start with general pharmacology, autonomic nervous system, and then is endocrine. So by the time the summer is already over, so in the month of February or March, the faculty goes to the wards, selects the patient who are from the diagnosis of diabetes mellitus, endocrine, autonomic dysfunction, and so on and so forth, and they are identified. There we have a medical record department, so MRD number, everything is identified, which is done over there. So then we discuss that, okay, we are going to allot you post cases. The notice is going to be put up over there. These patients who are actually vetted by the faculty, they try to find out that at least they are going to remain in the hospital next 4 or 5 days. So they are given another 24 hours after the notice is put on. They have to go to the ward, they have to take a complete history, completely follow up the patient which is there, and record whatever is they can find out over the patient. And then they submit, along with writing a prescription, how they will treat, because for each diagnosis we say you have to write a prescription for diabetes mellitus with neuropathy, with retinopathy, so that how it would give a variation to them. Once it is submitted to the department, it will, original copy is kept with us, a photocopy is with the students. We hold a session which is somewhere towards the end of July, so where 15 students are going to be allotted to each teacher. So they spend 10 minutes each trying to get answers from the students why they chose a particular drug over there, what is the rationale, and there is a scoring system for which we do. And obviously this is evaluated on a standard format which is there. So the learning objective remains the same, but the methodology is different. Here we are giving them actual case, and here they have time to progress it over a period of time. So we give them instructions, what type of file is to be used, what are the instructions over there, and this is just the title page, so it has the patient details submitted, the student who has been allotted this case, the index page, what are the information to be recorded over here, history, examination, investigation. We recommend them to make a graph so that they can understand the use of graphs to depict that information properly. So that is another added system into it, so that they can use these things over here. So drugs which are prescribed, generic, trade name, so just to get them acclimatized to it, dosage being used, dosage forms, route of administration, and so on and so forth. What we want them to do is that they should answer these 8 things. The group, mechanism of action, pharmacokinetics, indications, ADRs, contraindications, drug interactions, and functionality. Now if you see, what we are trying to do is we are selecting patients which include at least one analgesic, one antibiotic, a multivitamin, a prokinetic, or an ABD drug. So at least they are exposed to one drug each of the most important drugs. And this is just a way to ensure that writing these 8 things, so if they get a note on any one of them, at least they should be able to write it because they have done it on. Then we ask them to share if there is any difference of opinion why a particular drug has been used, a particular brand has been used, so they can come forth with that. Now, we earlier gave them option, okay, that you can submit type 1, but they are still smarter, they are one step ahead of us, so they went to Dr. Google, copied down the whole
drug information and paste it over. So for the last 2 years, we have made it mandatory. You have to write it yourself. Write in a legible handwriting. So no typing is allowed for them. And prescription which they have to give on the basis of this, again the standard format which is there. And let's say for this patient, they have given prescription because she was suffering just for type 2 diabetes. There was no other symptom. So again, she has given this prescription just to ensure that it is done like this. So this is the way how we score. Everybody has the same scale. 10 marks are given for file format, documentation as performed. So despite giving them all SOP, they still do file. Then whether the details of drug are added, given 10 marks. Identification of problem, they have reached the proper diagnosis, which is there because we already have listed the patient, what is the diagnosis, what is happening to the patient. Assessment of the problem, have they identified what are the differentials, what are the problems the patient is having. The most important point is discussion on drug selection. What is the rationality? So the 8th point is rationality, why this particular drug is being given, why this particular dose is being given, why this dosage form is being given. Then whether they are using graphs to represent lab investigations, using graph to look at temperature, blood pressure monitoring and so on and so forth. And lastly, we assess it, prescription writing on the basis of what is desired from. So that is all. So the problem we still face is that we still have to handle a larger number of patients, but that is again an issue which is not in our hands. We can't do anything about it. Whatever numbers are there, we try to use them optimally. We are busy with a number of other things which are there. And we have to ensure that scenarios are there because these days in a tertiary care hospital you do not get a clear cut case. We are always going to get patients with comorbidity, so there will be so many added permutation and combination which come into it. And that is really, I understand, it is challenging and stimulating. Because then you have the students looking at different scenarios. Why a particular combination is being used, there is some risk involved over there, still it is being used. It is definitely time consuming, you have to really talk with the HODs, you have to really liaison with them, ask them, make them available in the lecture theatre so that you are able to talk over there. And then at the same time you also have to be courteous enough that you don't tread on their foot. So if they are giving some point which may not be supported as per evidence, it's better you keep a quiet and don't try to highlight it and later you can explain to the students a bit later on. So that is must of the most important thing. You must have good communication skills and interpersonal relations. And you require a lot of computer, library, data and manpower just to do it because everything has to be done over there. And you have to have a in hand because obviously you are taking out these 2 hours or 4 hours out of this. So your timing which is already limited will reduce. So you have to plan in such a way that your other things, activities will go on. So basically problems are always going to be there. But we have to find a way to give solution to these problems. So that is all. Thank you very much. So if there are any questions, yes.
Yeah, I have a question comment. First of all, I would like to congratulate you that you have taken this initiative of holding these sessions and implementing it's a sort of problem-based learning exercises, and this is I think a need of the hour. This is, as you rightly discussed in your lecture, this is a priority which has to be taken up by all the colleges. But regarding the first exercise that you discussed, I think I would make a suggestion. It's not strictly problem-based.
I understand, sir. I am simply saying, I am trying to, you see, I am regulated by university, I am from a private college, I can't change much.
No, you can change it. You can change it because the premise of problem-based learning is that you start with the problem.
I agree, sir.
And later on the student searches for information.
Definitely.
So my suggestion would be that if you could administer or use up the problem before the lecture, before the didactic lecture, after that you have all the instructions. Whether it is a tutorial or a didactic lecture, so the problem should predate the activity so that they get involved in the searching process for information. So then it becomes truly problem-based.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks for your Sir, we give them marks over there. When the examiner comes, they have to carry that file with the examiner. So that is, so in the practical. So that is why we already request the examiners that okay sir, students have done this activity, they'll present it to you. If you find it comfortable, you can ask from that. Because I cannot dictate the examiner to do something, because basically their own thing. So it happens, most of the examiners who have come, so what they usually is that they try to just flip through it and whatever drug comes, as it becomes easy for us, so they will ask on that and they'll start.
You can give internal assessment.
Yeah, they just given an internal assessment is there. Yes.
Just one more thing, because I recently came across an article, in fact I talked about it in the morning session. British Pharmacological Society has come up with the
Module.
module and how you can assess prescription writing through an hospital.
Yeah, we are doing it. We are part of that BPS. I'm a member of BPS, so we are doing that. So we are coordinating with the accreditation residents.
Practical exam.
We are doing it. Only thing, it's very expensive. So we're just contributing as a trial run for them. So we are one of the only state GS has done it earlier.
Simplified, I mean the OSPI.
Sir, OSPI requires a lot of people to do. That is, we tried with the OSPI experiment, but only thing is this, I'm assistant dean also, and number of other responsibilities. So that's essentially divided into 4 groups. Because one of us is usually busy in some work or the other.
No, the trouble is if you don't assessment, as you rightly said, assessment drives learning. If you don't assess it, then
It's
students
right,
will not
actually.
take it seriously.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Before ending this session, we have provided you with a post-evaluation test form, kindly fill that form, and also the feedback form, and we'll be collecting it in 15 minutes.
जेल फाटक का चाहिए ठीक है पहुँच बताओ
Okay, so you are filling the post evaluation form right now. It's very important because just now I came to know that those who fill the pre-evaluation form and post evaluation form, they will reimburse rupees 25 from the registration fee. Right, sir?
माई तो लो जब कि जी कहाँ खड़े हैं इस लो कहाँ पे हैं ये लोग अरे वो भी नहीं है अब एक दूसरे जान नहीं ना होंगे तो पहचान जी कहाँ खड़े हैं हमारे अरे गो जो था कि खड़े कहाँ पर इनसे पूछो बताओ उनके जोरी आ जाओ वहीं लो जो अंदर हॉलम बताया हॉलम बैठो जिन निवास ग्राउंड पे है का विशाल पे जीत हो
हमारा ऑफिशियल पड़ गया डॉक्टर नितिन गायकवाड़
भैया भी जिस पर मत करो अब हाँ अभी टाइम दे
डॉक्टर राकेश मित्तल
ठीक है
डॉक्टर संदीप कौशल I request Professor Montgomery sir to please give the permission to Professor K.K. Sharma. We wanted to have a screening round for quiz competition because tomorrow we'll have a final round for quiz competition. We have to make a team of 2 persons. Alright, so because of the there's a number of departments here right now, so we are postponing the screening round. Tomorrow, before the final round, we'll have a written test for quiz competition, and from that they all will select team, and they will have to play the final round. Okay, so 4 teacher are body meeting. So you please remember, and you can also share this information to your colleagues and friends. That tomorrow we'll have a quiz round. Okay, right? So you can now go to your resting place. Okay, yes. And we'll assemble again for dinner at 8 o'clock. So first we'll take you to a place where we have a dinner. Alright? Missing Academy. From guest house, the bus will take you and take you to the what time? 8 o'clock. All o'clock or taking food. वहाँ से हम लोग बड़ोड़ा मार्केट है, मार्केट के सामने ही चलिए आप आइए 8 बजे